state. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So,
Now you
okay.
can start.
So yeah, this is my first live. I am Olivia and I am from South Africa, which is right on the southern tip of Africa. While I am on the topic of Africa, I noticed that a lot of commentators who speak about Africa, you guys talk about my continent and any other country in Africa as just Africa. There are 54 countries on this continent, and each of those countries they have a name with a capital city. And it would be really nice if you can specify where in Africa you are. Another misconception I see is that I hear there's no infrastructure in Africa. It's like I actually heard someone saying earlier in this week when I was watching a video on YouTube, someone was saying that people are drinking water from the sewage, right? It would be nice if you can be specific in which country, which city, or what area that is happening. Because Africa is a continent of contrasts. Like I live in South Africa, like I've just said earlier on, and I am living in the province of Gauteng. It's like it's a weird sound, and you have to be Afrikaans to actually, and even a bit of German and Dutch in Belgium, they are able to pronounce that sound. So I live in Gauteng, and it's close to what they say is the richest square mile in Africa. I live in Pretoria, which is close to Johannesburg. And interestingly enough, I just saw that there was some index where it said where expats they rate a city, and Joburg was like the worst. It did the worst of all the cities in terms of safety, in terms of just to be able to move in terms of safety and public transport, which I live here and I can completely agree with that. But I'm in Pretoria. So these were just some of the things that I needed to get out of my system when it comes to Africa. But what I wanted to address is South Africa is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. And I'm not completely biased when I say that. This country, it is so beautiful. But I think as South Africans, we have forgotten the beauty of our country and what we have and where we live and what this continent does to you. Africa, it's one of those continents that you feel a personal connection. It gets into your blood. It becomes, you get rooted in this continent. I don't know, there's no other way to describe this. There's no other way to explain what an experience, an African experience, does to you. And just as a matter of interest, it's like when Africa is being shown, and I'm talking about the continent, the wildlife is being showcased. Yet we have a city life. We have infrastructure. We have like the fastest train, one of the fastest trains are here. In Gauteng, there are many things going for us as South Africans, but we don't see it. I'm not saying that we must ignore the bad of this country. And if you look in my description, I said the biggest threat to development and growth in Africa, it's our leaders. Some of our leaders, not all of it. There's so much division. There's so much us and them when it comes to Africa. And your liberation movement leaders you are completely out of touch. And we are talking specifically about our South African leaders. You are completely out of touch with the reality of the people you were chosen to serve. You are out of touch with the damage that you have done and caused to my people in my country. You are blind and deaf to the carnage you have caused in this country. And yet, I don't blame you for that. Because people keep on choosing you year in and year out, myself included. You know, as a black person in South Africa, it was an incredible feeling when democracy came, when it arrived on our doorstep. We come from a system of apartheid. It was inhumane. It dehumanized us as a people. It crippled our minds. It destroyed our confidence. And we were brainwashed to such an extent that we think that we have to prove ourselves over and over and over again. And what did it do to us? What did it do? Because during apartheid, there was a constant fear. It was this unknown fear that was always in the air. You couldn't say what you wanted to say. You couldn't go to places where you wanted to go. There was, as a black person, where I'm living now, I was not allowed after dark, after a certain time. It was so bad that you had to carry a dompas, like a form of identity, so that when the police stop you, you must show that I am allowed to be here. We didn't have movement. You couldn't sit in the same train between white and black. There were different sections for white people and for black people. The beaches. You as a black person could not go to any beach. There were beaches, public, God-created beaches that you were not allowed to go to because you were not the right color. So that is the context. That is where we come from. The economy of South Africa has been built on the backs of black people. During apartheid, and I know many people will say that it's over, we should stop crying about it. It's water under the bridge. In terms of time, yes, it is over. But it's not water under the bridge because the scars and the damage that has been done, it stayed with us. So now what do? Because when democracy came and the people voted, like we were so proud to say the people have spoken. And of course, the majority of people in South Africa are black. And when I talk about black, and this is what I need to explain to someone who does not live in South Africa. When I talk about black in South Africa, you have clustered under black your Indian, colored, and your black people. Does that sound confusing? Because that is the system that all of us, we bought into. You know what I find shocking today is my teenage son and his friends, when they refer to people, they still talk about the black person, the colored person, it was a white person. And this is a new generation. Can you see how our minds have been crippled by apartheid? And you still tell me that it's over and done with? It's still in the minds and the hearts of people. The biggest power, amongst many other things, that it yielded was economic power. It limited black people. So now it's democracy, or we live in a so-called democratic society. What changed? Because you would expect, because We said it's because of white people that we are struggling. It's because of the oppression of white people that we didn't get opportunities. But in spite of that, there were many black people who studied, who thrived, who made a living, people who were able. When things became unbearable because of their education, their level of education and the opportunities they had, they could leave the country. But most had to stay behind and face the brunt of a very evil, heartless, and cruel regime. And I don't like to talk about politics because normally it regresses into something ugly and vile because few people have the capacity to debate beyond their emotions and their limited understanding of economics and politics. And economics and politics are so interlinked, you can't separate the two. And that brings me to our leaders we have today. I recently read the biggest threat to our economy in South Africa. It's Transnet and Eskom. Transnet is the government-owned entity, state-owned enterprise. It belongs to the government. And Transnet is in charge of rail and ports. They run that operation. So when you import or export anything in and out of South Africa, you have to go through Transnet. If you want to transport something by train from the ports to wherever, you have to go through Transnet. And it's falling apart. Our railways, the lines, the actual, not the railways, the lines, the lines that the train run on, it has been stolen. We don't have now most of the places. I haven't checked for a while. I have to confess. But most of the places, there are no rails, there are no trains running because it has been stolen, the infrastructure, and destroyed. Right? When it comes to the ports, it's such a mess. A few months ago, they hacked the system of Transnet. They hacked it. The government is in charge of it. The government of this country, there's a specific portfolio who's in charge of Transnet. And they can't manage. They can't. Eskom, in 2008, there was already a warning that Eskom cannot supply enough electricity to this country. That's in 2008. We are now in 2022. Every day, except for today, interestingly enough, every day, at a certain time, certain areas, the whole area, the power gets switched off. They call it load shedding. They tell us that is to preserve electricity because there's not enough electricity in the grid to provide it. Remember, they were warned about this in 2008. The president then was Thabo Mbeki. And they blamed him for not acting. But here's the thing about the ANC. Who makes up the majority of the government in my country, in South Africa? No decision gets taken in isolation in the ANC because they are very quick to remind us that it has been a collective decision. But if you were the face of the decision and things backfire, you get thrown under the bus. That's how they operate. So we have these two threats to our economy. and people don't understand it. Now they want to blame because the CEO of Eskom, Andre de Ruyter, is being blamed. A man who came 2 years ago. He took over a mess that Eskom was warned about this in 2008 already. Andre de Ruyter, I think he came in 2020. 2020, 2021, he came. And now they blame him for the mess. That is how short-sighted and how short our memories are. So that is the role. That is why I say our government is the biggest threat at the moment to development and growth and progress in South Africa. Renewable energy has been blocked with the previous administration of Jacob Zuma. When I read the discussions about renewable energy, those who were against it had no idea what they were talking about. People think that when you install a solar system at your home, a hybrid system, when you install a system in your home, they think that you can just take power from the grid and push power back into the grid when you feel like it, because certain parts has not been explained. There's so much confusion when it comes to renewable energy in South Africa, because the people with the information are too technical. They're too technical. So what is happening now at the moment in terms of renewable energy? Even though things are moving, but to set up the infrastructure so that there's enough electricity is being generated to support the grid together with Eskom, that's going to take time. Remember, I will come back, they were warned in 2008. It's now 14 years later, and in 14 years they couldn't agree on the way forward, and we are paying the price because of load shedding. When I started off, I said I live in one of the most beautiful countries in the world, but a country that has been crippled by our leadership, because that's what they call them, our leadership. Well, I don't see them as leaders. We don't have leaders in South Africa. We don't have political leaders in South Africa. Half of our youth, the youth is being described, it ranges between, some say 18 and 35, and then others say between 14 and 35, it's the youth. Half of them are unemployed. They don't have jobs. That's the official number, it's almost 50%. But when you read the research even deeper, almost 50%, it does not include the ones who have given up on looking for jobs. The ones, they don't have jobs, they've given up. They've tried everything. They don't know where to go anymore. Where does that leave us? Where? As South Africans, we have allowed ourselves to be crippled by the promises of our politicians. We have allowed our minds to be blinded and to be closed off by our politicians. And now people are crying about, they are desperate, and they are waiting on grants from the government. How far is a grant going to take you? How is a grant going to help you to grow economically, to provide for your family? You know, I grew up in a small town on the west coast of South Africa. And when I was visiting, there were three most beautiful little girls were singing in the park about a grant that they are waiting for. These three girls could not have been older than 10. we allow the government of the day to rob and steal our dreams because we have handed our power willingly to them. Let's look at xenophobia in South Africa. You know, the borders of our countries have not even been decided by Africans. And I'm sure it doesn't matter where you go in the world, the country that you live in, it's not the original borders. The borders were dictated by those who came and killed and maimed and raped and robbed and stole. And they determined the borders because these monsters negotiated with each other. And they came with the promises of civilization. It doesn't matter what country you go to, you will find that situation. So now, in South Africa, you find the hatred that South Africans, not all of them, not all, but many are feeling towards other Africans who come here looking for a better life. The hatred like, go home, you don't belong here. This is another African. And I find it interesting. The very same people who cry the loudest about colonialism are the very same people who are fighting for the borders created by the very same colonizers. Do you even know your history? Do you know who determined the borders of our country that you are fighting for? And I'm not saying that lawlessness must be encouraged. I am not saying that you can just come in and make yourself at home. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is the issue of foreigners, immigrants, whatever you want to call it. Because when I now go to another country, I'm an immigrant. I'm a foreigner in that country. So no matter where you are a visitor in that country. And the laws of the country must be obeyed. But for laws to be obeyed, certain systems must be in place. You know how many foreigners I've spoken to? And they said they would queue for days at our Department of Home Affairs, where, you know, it gets processed, all the your ID documents, your passports, your permits, asylum seekers. That's where you go when you come into the country and you want to get the documents to show that you are legally in the country. You know how many foreigners say to me that when they go there and they don't have money, they're being turned away. Not because they don't want to do the right thing, but because they don't have the money to pay a South African, mind you, to process their documents. What have we become, South Africa? Who have we become? Where is our pride in our country? That we want to build our economy. We want to leave a legacy for our children. We want to live in a country that we can say that we are proud of. And if we want to blame foreigners for the lawlessness, and look, when you break the law, you have to go to jail. But what are the circumstances? Because now they are rounding up foreigners who don't have documents without even asking, why don't you have documents? Our border control. What is happening at our borders? And are these things unique to us? No, they're not unique to South Africa. What to me is sad, I don't know whether to say it's sad or disgusting, but this nationalism, us against them. Where is it taking you? What are you achieving through it? How does it make you feel? Because clearly it must make you feel good because you are a miserable, absolute, despicable, vile person who thinks that one person you see, who you think it's less than you, is going to take away the little that you have. And why do you have the little? Why? Have you ever asked yourself the question, why are you in a position where you have to rely on a grant from government? Because you have bought into the idea that the government is your savior. Those bunch of useless, greedy, outdated, lack of vision fossils, and you think that they are your way to progress? Across the world, the biggest chaos, economies, economies of countries have been collapsed by their own government. Governments, politicians are not businessmen. Politicians don't have the ability to generate money. Politicians don't know how to make money. If they knew, they would not be fighting to hold on to the position of a politician. But because of the perks that come with being a politician, like in South Africa, you don't have to do much. You must just get into that position and fight with all your might to stay there. You don't have to contribute anything, and you will get a fat salary. I'm not sure now, but a few years ago, for a councillor, which means it's your representative in your local area, a local councillor was getting 50,000 rand a month, plus a cell phone allowance, plus petrol allowance, and a laptop, anything to make their job easier. That's what they get paid for. And you want to put your trust in someone who doesn't have the skills to create anything. You want to put your trust in someone like that to create a job for you, to build a house for you. You know what the role of government is? It's to make the policies, to provide the infrastructure. That's the role of government. You know where they get their money from? They get their money from taxes that you and I pay. And don't be fooled and think that if you don't work, if you're not unemployed, they don't deduct tax from you, that you don't contribute to the fiscus. You do. Because in South Africa, when you go and buy food, you pay VAT on certain foodstuff. 15% of what you pay, it goes to the government. When you take a taxi or a bus, anything that needs fuel, you contribute to the fiscus, because a certain percentage of that, it goes to the government. So you think that you're not contributing anything. You are. Government gets their money from us, the people, the very same people they disregard, ignore, abuse, oppress, threaten in many cases. If you do not speak the language that they appreciate or condone, life will not be easy for you. And that's governments across the world. So what can you do as a South African? What can you do to start changing things where you are? Because as if you rely on government, any government, wherever you are, if you rely on a politician in any form, not just you will stay poor, but you will stay poor for generations to come. So what can you do? Let's start with what you mustn't and cannot do. You cannot rely on government for your outcome, unless, of course, you like being poor. Unless, of course, you like to wait for that money. Maybe it suits you. You cannot go on hating people who come from another country and try and make a living in your country. Do you think that they want to be here? If things were well where they are, do you think they would have stayed here and take your abuse? Have you thought about that? You cannot blame your circumstances, because if you look at activists, if you read the newspapers, those who do research, everyone will tell you, oh, shame, shame, shame. Things are so hard, it's so brutal. Government is not getting you enough money, they're not doing enough. They will remind you of your poverty and your struggle. I don't even want to mention the media. If you are not from Africa, anywhere in Africa, you're from Europe, US, South America, Russia, China, any country except in Africa. When you think or hear Africa, what do you think of? Because I live on this continent. I was born here. Before the internet, you know what we were fed about Africa? Poverty, famine, wars, backwards, savages. That is what we were fed before the internet came. That's what we were being fed by the media, by the newspapers, by the magazines, by the government. Do you know that this is a vibrant, beautiful, pulsating, mysterious, full of life, undying spirit kind of place is Africa. We have the most beautiful beaches on this continent, the best coffee. Oh, the spirit of the people of Africa. You know, it's you don't see that unless you start to dig. You don't see that. And why is that? Because the media is still pushing the agenda of a poor, lost, broken, war-ravaged Africa. That's why many of you, when you talk about Africa, you can't even name the country. Are you in Senegal, Ghana, Cameroon, Nigeria? Where are you? When you talk about the place, when you say there's no infrastructure, name the place. Zambia, Tanzania, Botswana, Namibia, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, Swaziland. Do you know these countries? Angola. Hey, my African brothers and sisters, we need to talk and we need to share who we are and what we are capable of. The spirit of an African person cannot be killed. But yet, we allow our governments, our leaders to steal it from us. And we still go back to colonialism. You know why we failed? Why our leaders failed on this continent? We have the resources. We have the manpower. We have the land. We have got everything to make this a prospering, flourishing continent. Why didn't we? This is why. Our leaders are greedy. They only serve their self-interest. They do not like to be criticized. They are greedy, and it's their greed that destroyed our continent. You know why? Because the European masters, because that is what we call you guys. That's what we call you. The countries that colonized Africa, they put in their systems in place. They didn't teach you Africans how to run and operate it. I'm talking about those old fossils who come from the liberation movements. The leaders for life. That's Africa, isn't it? So, their banking systems, And if you go back, the banking systems, it comes, some say it comes from the Roman Empire, the banking systems, the monetary systems, the what else? The economic systems, basically, because those are the things that you need to run properly. The infrastructure. So let's look at the banking systems, how it's set up. It's complicated. You know, you need a whole video just to explain how interlinked the banking systems of the world are. Because you might think you are borrowing money from America or China, but then you find Russia is in the mix and Europe is in the mix, and suddenly, instead of just owing money to one country, you owe money to 5 different countries. That's how the banking systems have been set up. So in Africa, the systems were those of Belgium, France. It was those of Britain. Here in South Africa, it's a lot of the British systems because they were the ones who colonized us. The Germans, they used their different systems in the countries that they colonized. So now, finally, when liberation came, the Africans were never taught about those systems. They used the systems of the colonizers. What is the possibility of success in that? And it didn't end there. It didn't end there. Divide and conquer. When you can divide a continent, a country, a nation, a family, a community, you've already won the battle. Africans didn't speak with a united voice until now. Now they are beginning to speak with a united voice because they understand the power they bring to the party, to the table. So previous African leaders took the system of the colonizers and used it exactly like that, without adding their own. Because here is a secret of success that failed in my country. During apartheid, were those brutal monsters who killed and embarrassed, humiliated, and dehumanized us. There were some of the monster systems that worked. But what happened? Because this is the complete opposite from what happened with the rest of Africa. What happened? Some of the systems here they took, and others they rejected. Right? So what now, when you look at the rest of Africa, they took the systems exactly, not knowing how to operate it at all. So in fact, on paper, you were dealing with a liberated country. But on paper and in theory, the country was liberated. But it was not run by the leader they put in place, because the leader they put in place was greedy and had no vision. And when the oppressed becomes the oppressor, you get a dictatorship. And that's the African story. And this thing about Africans always crying the West must help, as if we don't have the ability to help ourselves. It's only now that the narrative is changing. You don't have to hate the West. You don't have to hate anything or anyone that doesn't look like you. For progress to happen, you need to work with what works for you on your terms and your conditions. That's why you need to know who you are. Here in South Africa, our railway system has collapsed. It has collapsed. I remember, I worked at the place that was part of Transnet. And I worked with a colleague, and he said, when we get qualified, he's going to go to this certain place called Fontaine. Because there was only Fontaine was in the middle of nowhere. There was only one train running through Fontaine. That was our rail system. I know when I was still young, there were not many buses going to certain places, but the train will take you anywhere. The system has collapsed. It has collapsed. And that brings me to you, South African, ordinary citizen. Because the government didn't steal the railway tracks. The government didn't break down the infrastructure. The government doesn't steal cables. It's you and it's me. Ordinary people who have forgotten how they can contribute to grow our country. Because we see our corrupt leaders who eat and steal and kill. Because whistleblowers die in this country. They die. And then the news just, it dies down. And very often when you look at the people who got arrested, you can see that person has been framed. So ordinary South Africans now, because you chose to give your power away. You chose to look up to a oath called a politician. And not all the politicians, but if you want to if the shoe fits, then put it on. Not all of them. But you chose to say, because they can do it, I will do it too. So now you think it's okay to steal and to break and to damage what belongs to you. We need to take pride in our country. We need to remember who we are. We need to remember what we are capable of. We need to reclaim our power. Because as much as you want to blame white people for your problems, you are still the one who has to make the decisions on where you want to go and what you want to achieve. There's no bigger enemy than the enemy from within. And you need to wake up to that. If you want to change things, as long as you're waiting for someone to come and change it for you, it will never happen. You will live a life of poverty and misery, and you will die in poverty and misery. You need to understand how to make money. What are your terms and conditions for making money? You need to understand that within you, you have the power and the might to create wealth. And this is not unique just to South Africa. It's across the world. You have taken your power and you gave it to someone who doesn't deserve it. And it has turned you into a beggar. Because that is what you become. You beg. When you start taking things, money for something that you didn't work for, it makes you a beggar. It's a harsh, unpopular, and very unpleasant truth. Because what does a grant do to you? Let me explain. Because I was in that position where I almost applied for a grant. But you know what stopped me? I thought about, if I open this door to a grant now, what door am I opening? You know, when you have no hope, no way out, every door is closed and you are dead inside. And your vision, instead of having this huge expanded vision, you can't even see further than in front of you. But the moment you accept a grant is the moment you accept defeat. Because when you take that grant, you become reliant on the state. And once the state is the one who pulls your purse strings, you have lost the capacity to choose, to have an opinion, to see the truth, to question. You will accept everything they tell you, and it won't end there. You will begin to see everything as a threat. You will begin to hate prosperity in any form. Because you open the door to a grant from the government who doesn't give a shit about you. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm even allowed to say that word. But they don't care about you. They don't care. We have our elections in 2024. Our president, who was shocked about the condition of the trains, shocked about the appalling conditions that people are living in, is now going around to the same communities and apologizing for the mess of the last 30 years. Why is that? Because he wants your vote. Our opposition party. We have an opposition party. And for those who don't know, South Africa has an opposition party. But they are so small they can't make a dent in the voters. And now what happens? Instead of focusing on how to improve things economically in our country, they politicize everything. So can you see how politics and the economy is linked together? Politicians can't run. The secret politicians, governments across the world, because you don't care, but the secret was prosperous country. You have the power to employ the right people, to choose the right people to get the job done, but you won't, because you need people who suck up to you, who sing your praises, who remind you how wonderful you are. You want people you can have in your pocket and you can blackmail and threaten so that they don't do what is right, but they do what you want to keep you in power. We have Action SA, started by Mr. Herman Mashaba, who was one of the original entrepreneurs of South Africa. And it seems even now Action SA is falling apart. I voted as Action SA. Let me say that, because in South Africa, I don't have to say who I voted for, but I just need to say that I voted for them. And now, they're just turning out to be like any other political party. I voted for you, Mr. Mashaba, because you hate corruption. I thought there was no one else who hates corruption more than I do, but you do. But your stance on illegal immigrants, it was off-putting. That is what put me off completely of your party. You know, with 2024, I don't know who I'm going to vote for. I look at my country. South Africa is bleeding. And I look at it and I'm asking, who am I going to vote for? To take this, who has the economic vision to take the country forward? Don't tell us about the ANC. The ANC is a mess. They are a lost cause. We know about them. You don't have to remind us. Who is going, not create jobs, because politicians can't create jobs, but you can create the conditions where jobs can be created. Who is going to create the conditions so that more jobs can be created? Who is going to start with the good news stories of this beautiful country? And I know I've been going on about the negative of South Africa, but there's so much positive. You know, you need to experience the spirit of a South African person. You need to walk on the streets of South Africa. I mean, I live in the city. Like, I can get now into a car and I can go to a lodge and you would think I'm somewhere in the wild. Within the city, there's nature all around us. You can drive from a nature reserve and you can drive to a shopping mall. That's what South Africa is. And by the way, we have malls, for those who didn't know. We have roads, for those who didn't know. And by the way, we have planes. We have different airports. So we have the infrastructure. But my biggest concern is, how do we liberate the minds of South Africans? How do we see the possibility of our country again? How do we build the economy? Not because we are waiting for government, but we start where we are. How do we do that? And that is my question. Because at the heart of everything, once you put money in someone's pocket, it gives you dignity. Because now you have a sense of, you're no longer a beggar. You don't have to look someone in the eye, but you work for it. And this is another thing I need to say. I have found very often the people who abused me as a business person, they were not white people. It needs to be said of how we disrespect each other as black people, because that's another thing that's crippling this economy. Someone can have a contract for millions. I don't care how many millions you get for your contract. And I said it before and I will say it again. To me, it's irrelevant. Where you got R1 billion for your contract. But if you employ me, if you ask me, if you subcontract my services, pay me what I'm asking you. Black business person, learn to honor your fellow black man and your fellow black woman. Learn to honor the skills that we bring. Learn to honor the knowledge that we have. I've had someone sending me a message 10 o'clock at night. Why do you do that? That subtle disrespect we have for each other. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about it. We need to grow an economy where our minds are free and we see the potential, we see the possibilities, and we act on it. That's the only way we can go forward. But if you don't know who you are, who you truly are, you are a pure, true, powerful son and daughter of the soil of Africa. You are empowered. You have everything inside of you to rise from the ashes and claim your place. Not through violence. No, you don't need violence to sort out anything. You need integrity. You need a vision. You need belief. You need the skills and the knowledge and the support. And you need to act on it. We are not here just because. We are here for a reason. We are here to make a mark in this world. And what I've mentioned now, it's not unique to Africa. It's across the world that the same things are happening. If I were to ask you now, when it comes to the leader of your country, are you proud? Do you feel inspired? Do they give you hope? So why is it that we consume so much of our time discussing these useless men and women who are supposed to lead us, instead of building where we are with what we have? Ask yourself that question. You have the internet. If I were to tell you now that you can start a business online, what will be your first excuse? Oh, I don't have money for bandwidth. Yeah, but you can send TikTok videos all around. You can watch YouTube videos. You can send WhatsApp messages, and those require bandwidth. If you want to change your situation, you need to change the way you look at things. You can either see what you don't have, and that is what everyone will remind you, or you can see what you have and what you are capable of. And what you are capable of might even surprise you. You are not helpless and hopeless. And these moments do come. I can say that with confidence. Your moments of feeling helpless and hopeless, they do come. Your moments of feeling heavy and desperate, they do come. Your moments where you want to give up, they do come. So the question is not, are they going to come? The question is, what are you going to do about it when they come? Because with all success lies the key of preparation. How do you prepare yourself for the days when you are down, desperate, desolate, and alone? That is the big question. But we can no longer rely on politicians. We can no longer believe the junk that the media feeds us. You must start being selective of what you consume, what you believe, and who you follow. You need to question and dig to find the answers and look at the different perspectives. Because as much like I am so sure that at some stage someone will watch this video and tear me apart. I'm sure of that. But you know what? That's irrelevant to me because this is my opinion. I might not have expressed it in a way that I would have loved because I didn't prepare for this. I just thought that I'm going to speak from the heart. I just thought I was going to speak to get all of these thoughts out of my mind. So next time I will come prepared. But I find there are certain things it doesn't need preparation because there's so much in your heart that it needs to get out. We are so quick to spread our poison and our negativity and our fear and our hatred. But we are slow to inspire and encourage and bold and motivate. The world has become an ugly, negative place. And you need to protect yourself against that, not become part of it. Who controls your mind? Why do you believe the things that you believe? Is it because they say in the media, you've read, you've heard? How many people's perspective do you have? Because I can say to you now, the media, some of the media outlets, it poses the biggest danger to society. Because the power of the media, it shapes our thoughts, our conversations, our opinions, our perceptions. And if you don't watch what you consume, you would think the world and everything else is going to hell. That's why I asked you, when I say to you that I am from South Africa, in Africa, what are the images that comes to mind? Because the media have painted a picture of famine, poverty, lack, wars, backwards people, savages, illiteracy, malaria, AIDS, no infrastructure. That is the picture the world has of Africa. And where does that picture come from? The media. You know how many feel-good stories there are from Africa? You know how many powerful inventors there are from Africa? You know how much riches there are in Africa? As Africans, we love opulence. Oh my gosh, if you want to see a flashy person, come to Africa. We like style. We like color. We love fashion. That is who we are. But also we need to remember where we come from and what is inside of us. So who shapes your world? Twitter? Oh my gosh. You are so lost if you get your news from Twitter. You need to dig. Twitter is just there for you to get an overview. But does it help you? How does it serve you? And I'm not saying this in relation to Elon Musk. I'm just mentioning this as a platform. You know, when it came with COVID and the vaccine, I was very interested to see how suddenly everyone became an expert. How ordinary people became enemies of each other because of a stupid vaccine. And now, and who is pushing the agenda the most? The media. Once again, who pays the media? Who pays the media? Who pays the media to push a certain agenda? You need to ask yourself whenever you read something, you need to ask, what is the agenda? What are they trying to achieve? And why did they write this? And you need to make up your mind. This thing of people just consuming blindly, that would have been okay. If you wanted to be an idiot on your own, it's okay. But now idiots take their poison and they spread it all over. Jordan Peterson said a very interesting thing. He said, and I'm not going to quote it exactly, I will just say it as I remember it. He said on it's a very small percentage of the population who's on your social media platforms every day. I tried. It's so tiring. I'm not good on social media. But there are people that when you go there, it doesn't matter. You could stay away for 3 months, you'll still find the same people. So we say there's a small percentage of people who are on like your Facebook, your Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Okay, I like YouTube. That's a different thing. But where you have to like comment all the time, not just make a video and post it, but having to write and respond to people. And he said it's a very small percentage. And it's that you can do it anonymously, which makes you a spineless coward, a coward who you don't have the guts to show your face, but you have the guts to insult and dehumanize and just say horrible things about people, right? So he's saying it's a small percentage. But because they are so vocal and so consistent, we begin to believe that it's the entire world that's like that. No. As an example, when I read the newspaper, or online, because I don't buy newspapers anymore, when I read the online news stories, everything is falling apart. Like everything is bad. Everyone hates each other. This one is fighting with that one. That one says that. And the whole world is collapsing. And then when I go to my local supermarket, there we are all standing, fussing and stressing about the price of mayonnaise. Because all we want to do at the end of the day is to live in harmony, live in safety, live in prosperity, having enough. That's what we want. But we allow the color of my skin, the tribe or ethnicity I belong to, the culture I come from, the area where I live, the language that I speak, the politician I follow, the pastor I like. We allow all that rubbish to cause division between us. And in the process, it keeps us poor and miserable. All of that because we focus on the wrong things. I thank you. I don't know how long I've spoken. I thought I was just going to give it a try for 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, but thank you. Thank you for everyone who listened and it took part. This was my first live. It was my baptism of fire. Next time I will be more prepared and I will be more coherent. But thank you so much. I am Olivia from the beautiful sunny South Africa. I think I'm going to make another live and just show you of the area where I live so you can have an idea of what Africa looks like. But South Africa is in Africa and Pretoria, the city where I live, it is in South Africa. So from beautiful, sunny, okay, not sunny, but from beautiful South Africa, I say thank you very much for listening or for watching. And you're welcome to leave comments or questions or, yeah, you're welcome to leave them. I thank you. I see.